LFA 148 goes down this Friday, and it's headlined by a vacant welterweight title fight between rising prospect from Mexico, Alfonso Leyva. He's going up against LFA veteran Chris Brown. In terms of odds, we got minus 500 on Leyva and plus 375 the return on Chris Brown. Leyva actually opened up as a plus 115 underdog and immediately got steamed to that minus 400, now in that minus 500 range. I kind of understand it. Whenever you have an undefeated prospect with a wrestling background, obviously a lot of people are going to give them some love, but we got to dig a little bit deeper. And that's why I am starting these regional breakdowns as well, mainly for the main events, but the rest of the card can be found on the Patreon, link in the description below. No more of this half-assed wiki capping shit. I'm going to be providing as much breakdowns for you guys as I can for the LFA, Cage Warriors, CFFC, and Fury FC. Main event breakdowns will be for the public on YouTube, but the rest of the card will only be on the Patreon, link in the description below. Given the amount of work your boy puts in, I think it's worth it. All right, let's get back into this LFA welterweight title fight main event. Now, I dug in pretty deep for this matchup, and I'm very impressed with the fact that I was able to extract some things that I felt like a lot of people were overlooking. So let's start off on the Leyva side. I believe he's coming up to his 30th birthday, or he's at least 30 years old very shortly. And he has a wrestling background, but when you watch his fights, you don't really see it, right? He seems to want to go out there and showcase his striking, which is pretty impressive for a guy that's mainly a wrestler. Whenever you go back and watch guys that come from a wrestling background, in terms of their striking, they like to throw wide winging hooks, and whenever they're crashing the pocket, no real technical aspects to their game. But Leyva seems to have shown those improvements and shown that progression in his striking game, where he's actually throwing straight shots down the middle, and that's how he's able to get most of his opponents out of there. Now, it seems like a lot of his early fights in his career, he was toying with a lot of these guys that he was much better than. And it seemed to me as though he just wanted to get more cage time, more experience, put himself into positions that he wouldn't be able to while doing live action training. Right. So I think that's why you see him going into the second round when he could be dusting these guys in the first round. A lot of people from some of the things I've heard are saying that his last win against Hayes, I think the kid's name was Daniel Hayes, was a legitimate win from the tomato cans that he was beating up on the UWC scene. I disagree. I mean, this Daniel Hayes guy, after 2016, took a 6-year long layoff, came back, won one fight against an 0-4 guy, then got that shot against Leyvas, and Leyvas was able to pretty much pummel him. This Hayes guy looked like a roid monkey. This guy, we know this. Whenever we see these guys just completely jacked and completely shredded, they try to go out there and get that quick finish. And if they're not able to, they really start to dwindle as the fight starts to go on, as we saw in that Hayes fight. And we saw Leyvas able to get him out of there with some brutal ground and pound. Good work from him there, passing all the tests that have been put in front of him to this point. However, Chris Brown is a different test. Chris Brown is a somewhat of a regional journeyman, right? He's 33 years old, trains out of the Jackson Wink gym, and you see elements of the Jackson Wink guys in his own game. He fights out of the southpaw stance more often than not, and he likes to use his lead leg a lot to chip away at the lead leg of his opponents. He throws up a lot of like Taekwondo type kicks, a lot of kicks to the body, spinning stuff. Really stays active with that lead leg, which I think is a good thing for him, especially in a matchup here against Leyvas. I I I get why people are piling on the Leyva side, considering the fact that he's 6-0, considering that he has a wrestling background. But we really have to put things into perspective, considering that Chris Brown has fought way tougher opponents than what Leyvas has been fighting on the regional scene for the last 3-4 years. You know, his fight against Carlos Leal on the PFL Challenger Series, he went to a split decision with that guy. Like, very close fight. And he didn't even look the greatest in terms of his body language. He missed weight, but he still went out there and put on a decent performance and probably even deserved the victory that night. Carlos Leal went on to go on and defeat Ray Cooper III in his next fight. That's the level of competition that he's fighting. Right? In his last fight alone, he beat a 5-0 prospect as an underdog. In his last 3 LFA fights, he's pulled off the upset as the underdog. He has a high school wrestling background, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe that he'll face even a much harder fighter in terms of wrestling when he takes on Leyvas this weekend, but that might come in handy for him. If you go back and watch his Carrington Banks fight, which I believe was, back in at the beginning of 2020, maybe 2019, I can't recall exactly when, but roughly about 2 to 3 years ago, we saw Carrington Banks land takedowns on him and control him and win that fight relatively easily. But that's when Chris Brown was dropping down to 155 pounds, killing himself to make that weight class. That's why he's been fighting at 170 recently, and he's missed weight a couple times because he is a big boy. I mean, he fights, he's a pretty big guy at that 170-pound weight class. I think knowing that this is a title fight, knowing that this is his opportunity to finally get noticed by the UFC and Bellator, he'll likely go out there and try to put on the best performance that he can. I've been trying to find any and everywhere to find the LFA 148 weigh-in results. Can't find it anywhere, but I'm hoping and assuming that Chris Brown managed to make the heavy or the welterweight limit here so that he could have a chance to win the title should he get his hand raised this weekend. From a pure betting line perspective, I don't see the upside in betting a minus 500 favorite who is still relatively unknown based on the level of competition that he's been going against. Just because he beat that Hayes guy in his last fight is not enough evidence for me that he's going to be okay with the weird, awkward style of Chris Brown. Chris Brown likes to use his, like I said, that southpaw style, use a lot of kicks. He rolls with shots very well, which is why he hasn't been knocked out in his professional MMA career. And his takedown defense might be slightly better now that he's up a weight class over the last couple fights. From what I've been seeing, there have been very few guys that have been able to get him down at this weight class. And when they do, he's quickly able to work back to his feet and get back to his handiwork with the striking. If his cardio is on point, his experience is going to shine through here, and it's going to cause Leyva some difficulties. And we don't even know what Leyva's cardio is going to look like should this fight go into the third and fourth rounds. Questions can be made about Chris Brown as well, but given his experience, given the training partners that he's been with, and given what we've been seeing from him over his last several fights, he is live, especially if Leyva has cardio issues, dealing with more resistance than he's ever dealt with before. So if you got plus 115, minus 120, minus 150 on Leyva, credit to you. That is a damn good bet in my opinion. But at minus 500, the money line side now, in my perspective, is the Chris Brown side. I had to take a little bit of a shot on Chris Brown here at plus 375, just given his experience, level of competition, and just awkward striking style that Leyva might have some issues with. Last thing I'll say about this matchup, in terms of Leyva's striking style, he pot shots a lot early in the fights until he's able to get his distance down, and then he starts unloading with combinations and big power shots, which is usually when he's able to put his opponents out. My question is, how long is it going to take him to get a beat on that awkward style of Chris Brown? And will it be too late for him where this leaks into the third round, fourth round, and he's behind on the scorecards? That's my question here. So a lot of unknowns on the Leyva side, in my opinion, given the lack of competition he's been going up against, and given the experience and the training partners and the consistency of Chris Brown. He's a live underdog in this spot, especially at that plus 375 line. So there you guys go. The main event breakdown for LFA 148. I think Chris Brown takes it, close fight. Odds should be closer in my opinion, just based on experience alone. So it has, at least in my opinion, warrants a small underdog shot on the Chris Brown side here. If you guys want the rest of the breakdowns on this card, you guys can check out my Patreon, link in the description below. I'll be spending the rest of the day hammering out those breakdowns for you guys. We'll be sure to have the card finished by the time I hit the sack tonight so that you guys can get some LFA action if you want. And lastly, if you're still looking for a place to bet and you got, hammered by some of those legality restrictions that are out there with betting on the UFC, I got you covered. BetOnline and Bodog will have you covered. Links to my referral codes in the description below so you can go out there and bet on the UFC this weekend, no matter where you're at in the world. Appreciate all you guys and look forward to my breakdown next week of, I believe it's Fury FC that's going to be going down next week. And I believe there is a CFFC next weekend as well. Both main event breakdowns come into my YouTube channel, but full card breakdowns will be on my Patreon. Check that out. If you guys don't want to sign up to the Patreon, the least you guys can do, hit that like, hit that subscribe, drop a comment below as well. Rag on me for picking the underdog here in Chris Brown, but we're betting numbers here, folks, not fighters. And I think we're getting a damn good number on Chris Brown this weekend. Good luck on your action, and I'll see you guys next week.